I was recently chatting with a friend who's buying a 1990s Beneteau that he wished came with a Yanmar, but actually has a Perkins, and he was worried that it might be a downside to this particular boat. And we recently did an episode on the history of Yanmar in sailboats because they're so popular and every sailor seems to want one. But what about Perkins? Are they just as reliable, with the parts network just as good, or not? Let's find out this week everything you need to know about sailboat Perkins diesel engines. Perkins as a brand goes back to the same era as Yanmar, but while Yanmar got its start in Asia, Perkins is from England. F. Perkins Limited, established on 7 June 1932, was founded by Frank Perkins and Charles Wallace Chapman in England to design and manufacture high-speed diesel engines. High speed. The world was enamored with gasoline in the 30s, and diesels were seen as just low-revving, slow-going solutions to slower problems. If you wanted to go fast, you wanted gas. But Frank Perkins and Charles Chapman wanted to prove the world wrong. The company's first high-speed diesel engine was Perkins' four-cylinder Vixen, which made its debut in 1932. In October of 35, Perkins became the first company to hold 6 world diesel speed records for a variety of distances, set at Brooklands Racetrack in Surrey. Sales were strong, and by the time of World War II, the company made 2 series of engines, the P4 and the P6. Soon after the war, the company went public and established a number of licenses for local manufacturing and sale. F. Perkins Limited was then purchased by its largest customer, Massey Ferguson, in 1959, with Perkins keeping its separate identity and its branding. From the early 70s onwards, Perkins was a major supplier to Caterpillar, who was a major customer for Perkins' smaller and mid-size engines. Caterpillar was a major producer of large diesel engines themselves for stationary and mobile applications. But in 1998, Caterpillar Incorporated bought Perkins for US $1.325 billion in '98, creating what they claimed was the world's largest diesel engine manufacturer. Perkins now had manufacturing facilities in the UK, the United States, Brazil, China, India, and a joint venture in Japan. So what about the boats? Well, during the 1950s, the Thames River Police were enthusiastic users of the Perkins marine engines, with their fleet of 38 boats, all equipped with Perkins. During this era, the P6 was proving to be the chosen propulsion engine for many, including the Royal Barge for the Royal Yacht Britannia and HMS Strickleback, one of 4 powered midget submarines with the Royal Navy. The 1960s was the era that Perkins began to put its stamp on the powerboat racing circuit of all places, winning consistent titles in the Paris 6-hour race. Both the Perkins 4.99M and the T6 354M finding favor with drivers in offshore powerboat racing. In 1966-67, Sir Francis Chichester made the headlines during his solo circumnavigation of the globe on his sailing yacht Gypsy Moth. Chichester chose the reliability of the Perkins 4107 for his auxiliary power, famously commenting that preliminary sea trials had shown how reliable it is, and this is one thing over which I have no worries at all. In 1972, Che Blythe chose the same 4107 when sailing non-stop solo around the world against prevailing winds. His yacht, British Steel, retained that auxiliary engine after the Whitbread refit they did on it. Now, your ears may have perked up when I said the 4107 was from as far back as 1966. Because it is, and we still see it in used boats today, along with many other Perkins. Many people know about the 4107, the 4108, the 4236, and the 4154. These became known as the Range 4 engines. These engines have been around since the late 60s and early 70s, and many are still in operation. In the 1990s, though, emissions requirements forced all engine manufacturers to change their designs a little bit. For Perkins, the Range 4 engines became the 1000 series, meaning 1 liter displacement per cylinder. The 4236 became the 1004. The 6354 became the 1006. Due to the popularity of those Range 4 engines, the 1000 series were in most cases drop-in replacement engines that were a little bit smaller than the Range 4, a lot quieter and cleaner. In the 2000s, emissions requirements once again forced a change in the Perkins lineup. The resulting new engine became the 1100 series, 1.1 liter per cylinder. The same size as the 1000 series, but due to technological advances in metallurgy and engineering, the new 1100 series engines produced more horsepower. They were quieter and cleaner than their predecessors. Tier 4, introduced in the 2010s, forced yet another change, resulting in the 1200 series engines. These engines, with 1.2 liters per cylinder, are designed to meet all emissions challenges for the foreseeable future. If you're looking at a sailboat, you'll find a Perkins was often installed because they're known for reliability, widely available power plants that we needed for sailboats, ranging from 40 to 100 horse, and easy to maintain designs with abundant parts availability and pretty much global support. The era of your engine in your sailboat is probably as follows. The 4 series, the 4108, 4154, and 4236, those are from the 60s and 70s, and they continued to build them for decades. The 1000 and 1100 series are from the 90s and 2000s. The 1200 series are the newer breed. Basically, they all stem back to that 4108. So let's dive into that one because there were so many of them made, odds are that you've bumped into one or two in your time. This 4-cylinder workhorse is widely praised for toughness. Many owners report engines lasting 6,000 plus hours with proper maintenance. But it's typical on the 4108 to see oil leaks, especially from the rear crankshaft seal, often about a quart every 15 to 20 engine hours. Starting them can be challenging on older engines, but adding a dedicated start battery with short cables has significantly improved that reliability for most owners. Fuel injection pump failure is the most serious and common problem, sometimes triggering a diesel runaway. Leaks from the high-pressure pump allow uncontrolled fuel into the crankcase. Repairs of the pump can cost around $1,000 or upwards of $3,000 or $4,000 for a new pump. A majority of recorded failures are due to the high-pressure fuel pump failing. Carrying an extra high-pressure fuel pump is probably your best bet. We talked to 4 different cruisers that all had runaway problems and all turned out to be caused by the pump. Air ingress is also a problem into the fuel hoses and return lines, often causing surging and RPM instability and rough running, even without any visible leaks. Replacing old fuel lines and seals can fix that problem. Misfires or idle roughness may stem from valve misadjustment, injector nozzle wear, or binding DPA pumps. Some sources report these engines idling unevenly but running fine above 1,000 RPMs. Some recommendations if you have a 4108. Check and replace the rear crank seal if it's leaking. Ensure all the fuel seals and return lines are tight and replaced to avoid air suction. That engine will suck in air and then start a whole runaway thing. Consider keeping a spare or rebuilt high-pressure pump. Regularly bleed and inspect the injectors and maintain your valve clearances. Adding a dedicated start battery and shorter battery cables has helped people get it started quicker. Rebuilding a 4108 can range anywhere from $2,000 to about $8,000, depending on how much work you do yourself and how far that rebuild goes, top end versus a full overhaul. If rebuilding is too much for you, it's very common to replace a 4108, and the easiest and most popular route to do that is Beta. The Beta Marine 38 or 43 are very popular, and they use the same mounts as the 4108 with exactly the same footprint. The Beta is based on a Kubota block. Alternatively, Nanny Diesel, the N438 or N450 are good options too. Expect to be upwards of $10,000 if you want to repower, but using an engine that uses the same mounts and is the same size will save you a lot of trouble and probably a lot of money. So what about this Perkins versus Yanmar business? We found some good, honest information from diesel mechanics. For reliability, the Perkins is legendary if it's properly maintained. The Yanmar, though, is very reliable with less fuss than the Perkins. Perkins' design was to be rugged and mechanically overbuilt, while Yanmar's are lighter and higher RPM, more modern. Older engine parts availability is good worldwide with Perkins, but with Yanmar, the parts availability is considered excellent. Perkins tends to be a little louder with more vibration than Yanmar, but Perkins are significantly easier for DIY rebuilds to be done, while Yanmars are often replaced entirely. Perkins uses simple mechanical fuel systems, while Yanmar tends to lean, especially on the newer engines, at more sophisticated indirect or common rail. Some sailing mechanics and designers said the Perkins is better in heavy cruisers like CSYs or Whitbys, while lighter coastal cruiser boats benefit more from the high-revving, lighter Yanmar. Perkins is a lot like an old Land Rover. It's clunky, rugged, rebuildable, and faithful for decades, while Yanmar is like a modern Toyota, clean, efficient, and reliable, but not so good if it's neglected. Ultimately, would I walk away from a boat with a Perkins with reasonable hours on it? No. I'd accept the Perkins, but keep in my back pocket a repower plan and start saving for the budget to do that later. Dropping in a brand new Beta with the same mounts and footprint would be the ace up my sleeve if the Perkins were to give up later. I'd also replace all the fuel lines and seals and keep an extra high pressure pump in my spares just in case, and replace the rear main seal for good measure, and have a definitive shutdown process if I were to end up in a diesel runaway situation. I wouldn't bat an eye over a boat having a Perkins though. What's your experience been with that brand? Have you had good things to say or maybe bad? Share it in the comments for anyone who might be buying into this Perkins legacy. And while you're here, does your boat have old moldy fabric on the walls inside like mine does? We just did a super cool article about how to replace that with a classier and more breathable wood strips. I think the wood strips look much better anyway. An awesome article and definitely worth checking out. I'll leave a link in the description for you. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like diesel engines and sailboats, and hit subscribe so I can see you again next time.